What's going on YouTube? This is IPSec, and this video is going to be an introduction to PHP Deserialization, also known as object injection. And I wanted to create this video because there's a lot of information out there on how to exploit deserialization vulnerabilities using tools like Serial or PHP generic gadget chains. However, there isn't much information on finding the gadgets yourself or exactly how this works. So hopefully this video helps you understand it. And in future videos, taking applications that have actually suffered from this, like WordPress and Joomla, and walking through the steps of creating an exploit with something like PHP generic gadget chains, and then maybe another video on the PHP phar unserialization method, which is spelled PHAR. But those are a bit more advanced for what we're getting into, so let's just jump in. Before we get into any actual exploitation, let's show the difference between a variable and an object, and why giving users control over an object can lead into bad things. So let's go into a PHP interpreter and just create a few variables. The first one, let's call it IPSec, and that would be A, and then B is equal to is not an admin. And then if we just concatenate those two strings with a period, we get IPSec is not an admin. Let's create a new variable, call it C, and make that equal to B, and then concatenate A and C, and we get I am still not an admin. Now, if we go back and update B and say is totally an admin, but only call C, so echo AC, we see I am not an admin. So this is showing that even though we say C is equal to B, it's saying C is equal to B at that point in time. If B updates, then C is not going to update as well. We can further demonstrate this with like D is equal to shell exec date. And then if we echo D, we need a semicolon. We get just the exact date. Do it again, date doesn't update. If this was an object, it would be possible to make this variable go and perform a function and get us the date. And this is kind of how object relationship mappers work. That's the PHP framework such as CodeIgniter or Laravel. It's taking the whole database and converting the database into an object. So now the PHP developer won't have to type like select username from users where users equal to IPSec. Instead of doing that to get information about a user, all they would do is say username IPSec, and then the framework would go and do all that magic to convert this into a SQL statement and pull that, and then this function could return everything such as if I did like groups, it could say, hey, IPSec is a member of administrators, or IPSec email could pull my email. So that's what object relationship mappers do. And since PHP moved to that type of technology, serialization has become much more common. Back when you had just simple like LFI scripts and not doing anything complex, all the coders wrote their own SQL queries, there was really no need for objects. But in this ORM world, then objects become a thing. So let us just create an object manually so we can really demonstrate exactly what is happening. So let's create a file called code.php and give it the standard PHP header, and then begin creating a class, which is going to be our object. So class user, and we can say public username, public is admin, just defining the variables ahead of time. And we can say public function, print data, and then start with a if statement saying something like if this is admin, then we'll do echo. We'll just start off with this username, concatenate is an admin, and then let's do else, echo this username is not an admin. Okay, so now let's create the object. So object is equal to new user, and then object username is equal to IPSec, and then we can say object isAdmin is equal to false. And then we can call object print data. So if we didn't make typos, we'll see IPsec is not an admin. I'm going to do one small thing to make this a bit easier. Put double quotes around this and put a line break. There we go. So we see I am not an admin. If I change this to true, of course, it's going to say I am now an admin. So we can package this whole class up with a serialize call. So if we just do serialize object, and we should echo this, we'll see how PHP stores serialized objects. And essentially, it is a letter. This stands for what type it is. O, this is object. S, we got a string here. B, we got a Boolean. And then the thing that comes right after that is going to be the length of the name. So in this case, it's user, which is 4. And then after this, since it's an object, it's going to be how many items are in this object. We have 2 items. We have the username item, and then we have the isAdmin item. So that's why this 2 is here. So the very first variable is the variable name is a string. It's 8 characters long, and that is username. Its contents is also a string. It's 6 characters long, and it is IPsec. Then we got this second thing here. The variable name itself is a string, which is isAdmin, and the contents of isAdmin is a Boolean, and it's currently set to 1 because that is true. If we change this to false, we see it changes to 0. So that is how objects are serialized, and if you do a unserialization, then that's how you'd store this whole object. So let's make this code able to accept HTTP input so we can begin creating an exploit and putting vulnerable things into this code. So let's go back into code.php, and we don't need this. We'll just put object is equal to, unserialize, and then we'll do post IPsec, and then object to print data. So all this is doing is saying this object is equal to an HTTP post, and the variable is going to be IPsec, and then unserialize that. So let's now PHP-S, and this is much like Python simple HTTP server. I just don't do it because if someone puts a PHP script here, it will execute it. So be careful with that. So we can do curl x post -d IPsec is equal to that object, and then localhost /code.php. We do everything correctly, which we did not. It should output I'm an admin. So let's see. Call to undefined function print data. So let's go back into code here. Let's see. Object -print data. There we go. So now I am not an admin. If we go and edit this manually by hand and change that 0 to a 1, we can see we can flip things in this object and convert it. Now, this object alone isn't really exploitable because we don't really have any code to jump to, and there's no dangerous code in this application. If there was dangerous code in this application, we could jump to that and then call those things. And that's called a, I believe, gadget. And if you go in Firefox, sorry, I'm not used to the new Kali right now. PHPGCC, I think, or no, GGC. This is a library, much like why-so-serial and Java, that does all the gadget finding for you with known frameworks. But we may get into more on that later. So let us create a second program, and that second program is going to create us malicious objects. So let's do attack.php, and actually I'm going to do this on a new pane. We can split it, v attack.php and v code. So all we have to do for attack is create the object. We don't have to have all this data in it. So to just create the object, we just need to create that class, call it user, and then we can do public function construct this username is equal to ipsec. This is admin is equal to true. And I need to put this there and then close this out. We can say object is equal to new user and echo serialize object. So if I do PHP attack.php, I have an equals somewhere. There we go. It just creates the exact object we used. So it'll be more obvious why I created a attack.php a little bit later. But the next thing we have to do is just create a exploit.sh so we can quickly exploit this instead of typing a curl command every time. So let's just do curl-x post-d ipsec is equal to $1 localhost code.php. Then bash. And before I execute this, let's just echo chmod +x exploit test. And that's just going to run this command. So we can get rid of that. PHP attack. Copy it. And then exploit, paste. And there we go. So now we have to add some various things into this. And for PHP object injection to work, you generally chain against magic functions. So if we Google PHP magic functions, magic methods, we get them. Construct, destruct, sleep, call static, get, set, whatnot. If you go back to the PHP gadget chain finder thing, you can see what vector they use. They have destruct, toString, destruct, wake up, toString, and yeah. So those are the methods. We'll go play with a few of them. So the very first one we want to play with is, I guess, toString. So to do that, let's say we'll create the class ReadFile and give it the public function toString. And then we can say return file get contents this file name. So that's all we added here. We're not adding anything actually calling this function, but because we have that defined, we can jump to it, and that is the gadget. So let's go back into attack and then create a similar thing here. So this will be class read file public function construct, and then we can just say this file name is equal to etc passwd. Okay. And then for username, I am no longer going to be ipsec. I'm just going to be new read file. So now if I PHP attack.php, I forgot a semicolon, and I probably forgot it in a second place. Let's see. What did I forget to do? What's the error? unexpected public. There we go. So looking at this again, I really should put, hold on. There we go. There we go. Okay. I really hate when things don't end on a new line. But we can see now, instead of this username being a string, that username is an object. 8 in length because ReadFile is 8 characters. It has 1 item, and its single item is file name. So now if we copy all this and do /exploit and send this object into our application, we get the contents of Etsy passwd. So we just exploited or injected an object to, instead of give us the username, it now gives us a file. We could give that any file we wanted. So the only thing we have to do is edit it here. I don't know another file to really include. The root proof. We'll call, proof.text test. And if we do /root proof.text, whoops, create that object, copy, and run this, we read that file. So there's plenty of other things we could do. Now, another common one is creating files. And creating files, that is going to be, let's do, think of a good way to demonstrate this. Let's actually show what code path means. So often when you hear deserialization, you can hear it's coupled with the attacker can jump to anything in the code path. And when I keep saying that, that's pretty much how like Java works. They're jumping to like common collections. And what that means is you can jump to anything that exact script can jump to. So if we created a separate file called logging.php and do the same thing, create a new class called LogFile and say public function destruct. And then we can say file put contents, this file name into this username, file append. So the logic of this is upon ending or termination, put a username into a file. So that's the logic of what this script is doing. So just now, because this exists, we can now go back to code.php. Whoops, that's already open over here. We just have to include logging.php. So now that's quote unquote in my class path. And if we do exploit.sh, not exploit.sh, attack.php, we can do the class. And I'm going to open logging here, log file, public function construct. This file name is equal to, where am I? Root, what directory? PHP unserialize /pwned.php, and we'll say this username is now equal to PHP system who am I. So instead of calling ReadFile, I'm just going to go to LogFile. And let's see what I typoed. surprisingly nothing. So we can copy this, /exploit, paste. If we do ls, we don't see anything. So let's go back here and let's see. We have PHP recoverable fatal error. Object of class LogFile cannot be converted to string. So what just happened here is, let's go back into the attack, or not attack, code. So this function LogFile went into this, and it tried to print the results of whatever file put contents were. And it couldn't convert that, and it errored out. And when it errored out, it crashed before it called destruct. So that is why we don't have the file here. If we go back into attack and just said, instead of username, we inject it into isAdmin, that'll probably work. So if we do this, new log file, and PHP attack, and we can copy this, /exploit, paste, ls, and we got pwned.php. So if we are exploiting this box, we now just call that script and get code execution. But there's a better way to do this, actually. So whenever you do destruct chains, you can force a destruction immediately, and that's called the Fast Destruct method. So let's show you what that is. So let's go back here, and let's do false, and we can change this back to new log file. And to make sure I'm not pulling a fast one on you, let's just do this again and see the file does not get created. So running this again, file not created. Now, the Fast Destruct method works by just forcing a destruction to happen. And that happens when it reassigns variables. So let's do this username 0, 0. And I did 2yy to copy 2 lines, and 1, 1. So now we have this whole thing twice. We don't need the whole thing twice, it's just quicker to do. You just need a second object. So now this is extremely messy. You can see up here where we have log file, it's got 2. And where's log file here? It's still got 2. But these 2 are a array or dictionary. So let's see. So let's see. I1. Yeah. I can't read this right now. My eyes are playing tricks on me trying to read all these letters. But essentially, there's now an array in this. So if we copy this content and then do, actually, before I do that, let's go back here. And I'm just going to clear the screen. So you can see it does, in fact, still error out. So if we /exploit this huge blob, we get array is an admin, do ls, it created pwned, and it actually didn't error out. I hope that's what Fast Destruct is. Yeah. So I haven't looked too much into this, and now just doing this, I can see it behaved differently, and instead of failing because of how it returned, it succeeded because it's an array. But the logic behind the Fast Destruct method, let's just go and explain this. To my understanding, is when it goes and does this, it's going to go and try it twice. And the second time, it's defining new variables. And then when it does it the second time, it's clearing out the results of the first one, which means it destructs. So I think that's what the Fast Destruction method's doing. Now, I'm not sure. So hopefully that's correct. So now that we're through that whole rabbit hole, and we can go into the next thing I want to show you, and that is probably, where am I at now? ReadFile. We can create a gadget chain to call a function that doesn't have any magic methods. So this will be the last example we do. We can do class pwned and then say public function pwn, and this will be system this command. So right off the bat, we can't actually call pwned because it doesn't have a magic method for us to do it. If we tried, we can just see ourselves fail. So we can do class pwned, public function construct, and then we'll do this command is equal to touch root php unserialize / finished.txt. So if we just called pwned here, how we have been before, new pwned, okay, PHP attack, copy this, and then exploit, paste, and do an ls. We don't get that file because it doesn't have any magic methods tied to it. So it never calls this being pwn. We just created this class. When it got here, it said, I don't know what to do. I'm going to do nothing. It doesn't know to go into pwn. So if there was a destruct method somewhere else using this function, or a wake or some magic string using this, it would then magically work. So if we do this secret pwn, so now this read file is using it. And then in attack, instead of file name, we just do new pwned, and this is new read file. And I think this is going to work. So let's do /exploit, paste, ls. It did not work. So let's see what we have. Let's see. Oh, we probably need something here saying this secret. Let's see. There we go. Now I got syntax highlighting back. I don't know why sometimes when I do that, syntax highlighting goes away. So this is looking good. Going back here, we can see our script did error. And toString must be a string value. And we gave it an object. So let's do, instead of this file name, this secret. And this file name can be a string. This will be root proof.txt, I guess. And just putting the code side by side, this function has this secret pwn right here. So let's do PHP attack and copy this /exploit, paste, and we do ls, and we get finished.txt. So that is how PHP object injection / deserialization works. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Take care, and I will see you all next week.